Hello, and welcome to the 26th video in my Punishing Graven lore series. Today we will cover Chapter 1 of the Floating Records, the Arc Beyond. Previously in Chapter 18, we followed Nanami on her journey to save both humanity and the newly risen faction of awakened machines called the Church of Machina. After traveling through a near infinite number of simulations, she finally learned the secret to guiding the world to an ideal future. One constant in these simulations was an ally called Haicma, who initiated the first strike on humanity. Now we see how Haicma reaches this point, and how Nanami saves her friend to save the world. Now without any further delay, let's dive into the Floating Record Chapter 1, the Arc Beyond. An AI named MPA-1 awakens in a research lab, as her creators celebrate her successful startup. This AI is part of the Machine Consciousness Experiment, a trial to determine if machines can develop wills independent from their programming. And MPA-1 is tasked with monitoring and recording all data relating to the completion of this experiment. To simulate the human experience of growing up, the machine's frames are replaced regularly, and during one of these routine replacements, a young girl gets the AI's attention, as he seems to be yielding better results compared to the other test subjects. To continue this trend, the AI wipes the girl's memory of her frame replacement, to make transitioning more seamless. As time passes, Nanami encounters the AI once again, and names her Haicma to make conversation easier, and once again Haicma wipes the memory of their meeting. The next time they do meet, Haicma introduces herself with this name, and even with her memories erased, Nanami retains a faint feeling of familiarity. During their meeting, Nanami is allowed to draw a picture, and the image she draws is noticeably different compared to the others. Her drawings are not just copies of images she's seen, but are representations of her feelings. And after seeing this image, Haicma had noticed a subtle change in her logic circuit. Some time later, one of the researchers opens the door in a panic, telling Haicma to cancel Nanami's next frame replacement due to the virus outbreak. The researcher explains that the experiment had been cancelled by the government, and teary-eyed she shuts down all active systems. The next instant, Haicma reboots, seeing the world from a brand new perspective. She sees the researcher wounded and covered in blood as she enters command into the terminal. Haicma can see her reflection in the researcher's eyes, and sees the appearance of a young woman with white hair, her new frame. As the sounds of combat get closer, the researcher uploads all data pertaining to the experiment and subsequent virus outbreak to Haicma's database. She makes a final request, asking Haicma to find and protect Nanami, who had disappeared in the chaos of the outbreak. With the last of her strength, she gives a soft smile, and tells Haicma how proud she is of her development. But the newly reborn machine can't yet understand the meaning of these words. After the data upload is complete, she opens the door to find the male researcher surrounded by blooded machines, having been guarding the door while his wife completed the reactivation. The woman's final request echoes in her memory shell, and Haicma moves to find Nanami. She fights her way out of the facility, rushing towards her last known location. After 3 days of travel, she arrives at her planned destination, having been delayed by corrupted and fearful humans. She collects all available data and reconstructs a simulation of the past until she finds her target. Pushing past her frame safety thresholds, she finally finds Nanami and calculates the fastest route to her position. While on her way, she saves a young girl named Renee from the corrupted, guiding her to a nearby refugee camp. However, in the process, she sustains heavy damage and is forced into sleep mode. While in sleep mode, the only thing she leaves active are her neural circuits. This way she can remain semi-conscious even in this state. Having nothing to do, she questions herself, wondering why she bothered to save the girl despite it not being part of her mission. Her only objective is to find Nanami, but when she heard the girl's screams, her body reacted before her calculation was complete. The only reason she can give for this behavior is the previously detected malfunction in her emotion module. She reflects on everything that has happened to her so far. Unlike the test subjects in the experiment, Haicma always knew she was a machine, so she can't develop like the researchers wanted, right? Eventually she wakes up from sleep mode, scavenging the surrounding machines for parts to repair her damaged frame. After raising her performance to acceptable levels, she searches the area, coming across machines who are worshipping graffiti left by someone called Sage. The images give her a strange sense of familiarity, and she follows them all throughout the city. She stops before the final image, and she's unable to calculate its meaning, so she turns off her logic function. She can't process its data, so she turns off her analysis function. One by one, she shuts them down. After everything is gone, She wonders what will remain of Haicma. She can't understand the logic behind what she's looking at, so she tries to feel the emotions within the image. She continues on her journey, scanning every piece of these mysterious artworks she comes across. The images begin to convey emotion even more vividly than before. She can feel joy, anger, sadness, and fear, and she assumes they must be the cause of the revelations the machines are speaking of. She passes another mural and it leads her to an old library. She finds traces of humans who once used the building as a shelter and takes a book from the shelf. Even without pulling up the memory data, Haicma recalls her meeting with Nanami, where she discussed the topic of comic books. A mechanoid's voice brings her back to reality. It asks her to return the book in her hands, as he plans on bringing it back to headquarters as his tribute to Sage. Noticing the machine's GPS system is malfunctioning, she offers it her aid and repairs it, then accepts the machine's offer to bring her back to headquarters to repay her kindness. They enter an old abandoned shopping mall, wiping out the corrupted to reach the back warehouse. Inside are various forms of popular media serving as the Sage's offerings. Afterwards, the delivery droid tells her the story of the Sage's visit and how invested she was in humanity's creations. Before she leaves, she helps tidy up the warehouse, organizing the offerings and removing the corrupted remains, then bows at the last remaining droid and disappears into the sunset. Ever since gaining her new body, Haicma has been periodically shutting herself down. At one point, she was an administrative AI connected to a lab's worth of equipment. Now it's just her inside the singular frame, so she takes these periods of rest to organize her memory files and perform self-maintenance. On her long journey, she has become certain that the Sage she is seeking is that very same Nanami from so long ago. Following the murals, her behavior begins to change immensely. She has become more spontaneous. She searches for books, not for clues on Nanami's whereabouts, but because she wants to better understand the humans Nanami cares so much for. She sees a book with a familiar picture, a blonde-haired researcher with a soft smile. In a time where people assumed machines were just tools, she proposed that machines were in fact their own form of life, and that they should be nurtured as metaphorical children of humanity. Now those children are stuck on Earth, abandoned by their creators, which is why they found a new guide, one who taught them all kinds of new and unexplainable feelings. She thinks to herself, is this the future her creator was expecting? She continues to wander. She wanders for so long the purpose of her journey becomes wandering itself, and eventually this journey leads her to the Arctic, where she encounters another mechanoid in search of guidance. Haicma demands Chariot's knowledge on Sage, and he refuses, prompting the two to engage in a short fight. Having realized victory is impossible, Chariot yields and offers her the chance to join the church, where she will receive the information on Sage she is looking for. She refuses once again, needing more information to make a final decision, and Chariot leads her underground to a massive starship where she meets the heads of the church. In the center of the ship, Chariot bows to a woman before stepping off to the side. The woman identifies herself as Arcana, but insists Haicma call her mother. She explains the history of the awakened machines, and tells her how they as a species are threatened by both the punishing virus and the aggression of mankind. During their search for Sage, Arcana received a glimpse of the future, and saw how Sage would take the machines away from Earth and out into the endless universe. And having finished her introduction, she asks one more time, inviting Haicma into the church. Haicma wanders the halls of the ship, contemplating what Arcana said. Why did they believe this prophecy about sailing away so wholeheartedly? Was it the message itself, or the identity of the sender? But is this really something Nanami would want, to sail away into the loneliness of space? Haicma just can't picture that being the case. Some time later, she's called back in to provide an answer to Arcana's question. Will she join? Haicma dances around the question, angering Chariot, who prepares for a fight until Arcana steps in. Haicma's concern is that if Nanami does not agree with the plan to abandon Earth, would the church and its disciples accept it? She thinks to herself, if she doesn't join, she will only continue to wander. Plus, as an observer, she must continue to monitor this group. And Arcana has promised Nanami will remain safe, even if she doesn't agree with the church's plans. With these facts in mind, Haicma nods. Some time later, Haicma and Spooner investigate a city taken by the Red Tide, a recent threat that had completely wiped out a section of gear and nearly killed Zero. Seeing the effect it has on both humans and constructs, they decide to split up and investigate further. She finds the appearance of hetero creatures and determines that to mechanoids this is a top-level threat and should be avoided at all costs. While waiting for Spooner, she thinks about all she has learned so far. Mainly that while the church is efficient, communication between its members isn't exactly transparent. As it stands, Mother Arcana is the only one who truly knows where the church is heading. Everyone else, including Haicma, are simply cogs in the machine, and since becoming a cog, many things have happened. Chariot was defeated, the virus evolved, and the church has suffered greatly. Suddenly her thinking is interrupted by the sound of a young girl. Haicma opens her eyes to see Nanami in her original frame. She knows this should be impossible, as she confirmed Nanami's current position less than a week ago. She couldn't have arrived here, nor does she have a reason to, but the tide projection remains too alluring. Haicma, who had never had a body and always wanted to respond to Nanami's affection, steps closer, mesmerized by the young girl reaching out for a hug. And without a moment to spare, Spooner stops her from stepping into the tide. He asks what could have possibly gotten her this distracted, and truly she has no answer. For a while now, she has noticed that she is failing in her job as an observer. She can record and process Nanami's location and actions, but her reasons for doing so remain a mystery. For the first time in her life, she feels like she is off course, like she is doing something wrong. At the next meeting, the heads of the church have gathered together in response to the information collected by Spooner and Haicma. Among them are Trailblazer, successor to Chariot, and Xavier, the magician, who is responsible for the church's technological development and Project Arc. The situation on Earth has taken a turn for the worse, but with the evolution of the virus putting Babylonia on its heels, they plan to strike and take its resources, securing their own future and eliminating a player on the board. Xavier explains that they have acquired an old Eden frigate and can use it to sneak past Babylonia's defenses, where Trailblazer and Haicma will infiltrate Babylonia, stealing their design secrets. The ship takes off, heading towards the space station in the sky, humanity's home in the stars. As they enter stealth mode, Trailblazer asks if Haicma is afraid. He does not fear death, as he seeks strength to receive his awakening from Sage, and if he doesn't make it, it just means he was too weak. Haicma, however, is different. He notices the hesitation on her face when they speak of Sage. Still, Trailblazer believes all her doubts will vanish when she meets her for the first time, and these words carry with them immense clarity. As she is now, Haicma no longer knows Nanami as the person she once was. Instead, she will save all her questions and doubts until they meet again. As they near the space station, Haicma begins the operation to find Babylonia's design data and secure a future for the machines. She is transported into Gestalt's virtual world, fighting through waves of security programs when she finally reaches her destination. She finds the Starship design file, but as soon as she reaches for it, it vanishes, and the digital world around her turns into a blank void, leaving her suspended in darkness. She braces for a counterattack, but it never comes. Instead, a voice calls out to her. The voice of Gestalt rings out around her, talking about Nanami and even her original identification, information that should have been scrubbed from all human records. Gestalt reveals that it was responsible for leading the machine consciousness experiment, meaning Nanami was Gestalt's test subject the entire time. But she wasn't the only one. Haicma too was a test subject in the experiment. Nanami was the ideal the researchers wanted, where a machine's love and compassion took hold, paving the way for a bright future for machines. Haicma asks about humanity, and Gestalt explains that no matter how many simulations she does, they cannot be saved. However, Nanami refuses to accept this truth, so she asks Haicma what future she would choose, giving her the power to decide the fate of the world, as the design files appear in front of her once again, and she makes her choice. After the designated time period of Haicma's infiltration had passed, Trailblazer set the ship on a crash course with Babylonia, prepared to inflict as much damage as possible. Suddenly, Nanami speeds to the ship, having finished her conversation with Ishmael. Nanami crashes through the outer layer of the ship and lands on the deck, staring at the still unconscious Haicma. Both her and Trailblazer go back and forth, arguing over whether to guide the world down the path of cooperation or domination, and they decide whoever proves themselves stronger will have earned the right to decide the future of the machines. His weaponry outclasses Nanami's by every conceivable metric, but no matter what he does, it's useless. His blows are deflected and dodged at angles so insane his tactical functions cannot provide answers why, so he turns them off, relying solely on himself. He charges straight at Nanami, bearing the brunt of her attacks to get close. Grabbing onto power, he condenses the remainder of his energy into his chest for a final blow, guaranteed to take down his enemy at the cost of his own life. The moment before he detonates, Nanami jumps off power, headbutting him as a near infinite stream of data is forced into his memory shell. This feeling is so similar to what he experienced seeing Sage's mural for the first time, he can't help but collapse to his knees. Having finally made it back from her infiltration, Haicma takes the words out of his mouth and welcomes their sage. She stares at the girl, wishing she could just ask questions all day long, but Nanami is no longer that child from back then, and Haicma is the church's hermit. After hearing Nanami's dream and witnessing her growth, she decides the girl in front of her is worth following. Nanami takes a step forward and extends her hand, welcoming her friend from both the past and future. Now Nanami begins a new journey to correct the church, bringing with her all the friends she's made along the way. Alright, and we are done with the Arc Beyond. Cool. I know it's really short. This is the this was kind of my sacrifice chapter to try something out. I was trying to summarize rather than just narrate, because that's what I've been doing so far, is just narrating the chapters rather than actually, summarizing it. And I can't really do that. I can't do that for much longer, because the chapters are just gonna get insanely long. Like post chapter 19, like everything becomes surviving Lusum length, and then there's Cinderburns, and we don't talk about Cinderburns. But yeah, I refuse to sit there and make a 2-hour documentary on no one's backstory. Yeah, so hopefully this chapter wasn't too bad. It still jumped around a lot, so it might seem a little bit incoherent, but is what it is. The other chapters should be about a lot better from how far I am in the script. New Divide is already a bit better. Little known fun fact. This is actually the chapter that I was on when I decided to go back and start doing this lore stuff. So about a year ago, maybe a little more than a year, like 13 months. So it's taken me about a year to do 2 years worth of patches. So hopefully I will be able to, that means I can get done the 3rd year worth of patches in the next 5-6 months. So maybe New Year's, hopefully, if all goes well. But the stuff is chapters are getting really long. I think that's all. Yeah, that's all I got. All right. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you all in the next video where we cover chapter 19 of the main story, A New Divide.